Hello everyone, Dr. Michelini here. Today's video is about finding and integrating sources for your new final research paper. This is the one that ChatGPT is writing and you are critiquing. So let's dive in. Part one of this video will cover finding sources. You know that you need two types of sources for this paper. The first one is a secondary source like an article or a website, and the second one is a peer quote from this class, okay? So let's dive in for how to do this, okay? So far, you've identified a text for this paper and identified your connection to it that's specific to you. Then you've had ChatGPT write a paper, you've gone through 5 or more iterations of that paper to find the best one, and gone through and critiqued and praised what ChatGPT is doing well or not so well. The next step is to dig further, okay? So armed with your critique, you are going to find out if ChatGPT's sources are at all valid, okay? Some of them might be, some of them are going to be made up sources. So ChatGPT, we know, is unreliable about 30% of the time. And so it does fabricate false sources. Now it's amoral, so it's not trying to lie to you, but that's just the way that it works. It's coupling words together that it's seen together online. They may or may not be actual real sources. If it does come up with a real source, the second thing to check is whether or not the source's quotes are actually in that source, okay? And Google is your friend here. You can just Google this stuff. The second part of this, though, is finding your own sources to integrate into the paper that you're eventually going to write. So what you can do here is a couple of things. You can look for sources that back up something you want to say, like your connection to it. Like ChatGPT didn't write about my connection to 16 Seconds or to Today I Am Paul or whatever poem or short story that you identified as having a connection with. And you might want to find a source that kind of backs up your perspective of that piece. Or you can find a valid source for ChatGPT's perspective. Let's say you really like what ChatGPT wrote about and you want to have a credible source for it. You can look online and see if there is a credible source to back up ChatGPT's point, okay? So either way there, but then of course you also need a peers discussion post to back up one of those points as well, okay? So that's our focus right now, all right? So what kind of secondary source research are you doing? You might be wondering. There's a few different options here for finding a secondary source. Again, this would be like a website, an article, something from the library databases. You can focus on literary analysis. This is going to be a piece that's written about your poem or story that you chose. This is probably the hardest one to find, okay? This is what most people think of when they go to find a secondary source, like they might look up articles on Today I Am Paul or articles on Inevitable by Mahogany Brown, okay? You're not going to find a whole lot. So I wouldn't recommend this one. The one that I would recommend is focusing on a theme. So look for articles or websites that consider a theme that's relevant to your text, such as, defense training for young girls, if you're looking at 16 seconds, or coming of age, if you're talking about beauty contest, right? Some of these themes, what is the story or poem about? And then you can do research on that. If you're interested in artificial intelligence caregivers, find a real life article on that, okay? For Today I Am Paul. You could also focus on impact. So where has this text had an impact in today's society? Some of these texts are like emblematic of what's going on in our society. Like they're really representative. Javier Avila's piece is representative of some of the racism that people experience in our society, right? So that might be an avenue to explore, okay? So any of these are valid, but again, I think the easiest one is to focus on theme. Where can you find these sources? Couple of good places to look are the library databases at VC. Okay, so you can come here. You can type in what you want to find in the box here, artificial intelligence and caregiving. Let's see if anything comes up. Okay, and if you can't find anything, you can always ask a librarian. They are here to help you. Okay, they have a little ask us help button here. But something like this is going to come up with sources right away. It's a topic that I know has been written about, okay? So you could look through these sources, see if one of them backs up your points, that you can choose quotes from it to support what you want to say on this topic. The second place to look would be Google Scholar. Google Scholar is like Google, but only for reliable sources, okay? So you could type in something like, let's do the same thing, artificial intelligence, and caregiving. Okay, and you're gonna find some websites, some articles on this. If you hit a paywall, like let's say I'm interested in one of these articles, but it tells me I have to pay for it in order to view it, like see this one they're charging $27.50, don't pay for it, okay? You can find probably another article on it, or you can take this and see if it's in the library databases, okay? As a student, your tuition helps pay for access to a bunch of different articles in the library databases. So here it is. It looks like they have that source. It's right here. So you would be able to access it there. If it might be slightly different, actually. It is slightly different. So if you really wanted this article, what I would do is ask a librarian to help you out with finding it if it's not close enough to what you're looking for. Last but not least, you can look at Consensus. Consensus is an AI search engine, okay? So we can look at caregiving and artificial intelligence, okay, and see what it says here. It's going to pull up articles from across the web that are reliable, which is nice. It does not hallucinate. It's not like ChatGPT. It doesn't come up with random answers that it pulls out of nowhere, okay? It's really nice that it's able to pull reliable sources, okay? So same thing here, if you run into an article that it wants you to pay for, don't pay for it. Go back to the library databases and see if you can find it there instead for free, sort of. I mean, you've already paid for it with tuition, right? So you just don't want to rack up extra things. But this site is really cool because it'll give you little summaries of the articles so that you know what you're looking for better. And then if you're interested in like, well, what article did talk about decision support systems? If you click on 5 here, it's going to take you right down to 5. You can click on this and it'll give you more information about it. The full text looks like it's available here. Okay, it'll tell you a little bit about this article. You can generate a snapshot to give you the abstract, which is like a quick summary or overview of it. Okay, so these are the places that you're looking for to back up your own point, okay, or to find a reliable source to back up one of ChatGPT's points. Okay, tips for finding and integrating sources. First thing I would do when you go to look for a source, consider your own perspective, that part 1 of this assignment. Why did this text resonate with you? Was that present in ChatGPT's paper? Did ChatGPT write about what it's like to be, you know, a young girl fearing for your safety, or somebody coming of age, or somebody experiencing racism, right? Did ChatGPT write about that? If not, you know, that's a good place to look for a source to say, hey, ChatGPT totally missed this. And by the way, here's a source to back up my perspective, right? Also, if it has your perspective, does it incorporate your peers' perspective? Go back to the CCQQs, go back to your discussion boards and see, you know, what are the connections here that my peers were making with this text? Did ChatGPT cover them? I can 100% guarantee it didn't include every single perspective in the class, because that's the beauty of human understanding. When a human looks at a text, it's going to understand it from different ways depending on who you are. ChatGPT is a mix of whatever it's been fed. It can't come up with an original idea on its own. It's going to be like this amalgamation of whatever's online, okay? So it's not going to have that originality to it. So look for that, and then you could find a source to back up your perspective or your peers' perspective. If you are having trouble finding sources, focus on the themes, not about articles or papers or websites written about your text. You're not going to find a whole lot out there. I use very new sources, so it's not a good idea to go looking for a source about that certain text, okay? Annotate and make notes. So aim to include 3 or more quotes from your secondary source, as well as one from your peer in the paper that we're moving towards. Now, you don't have to worry about writing that paper this week. You're just focusing on finding sources, but keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go through an example together here. I am going to pretend like I am writing my final research paper on Today I Am Paul by Martin Schumacher. And I've decided that I'm going to focus on themes and maybe some impact. So my question is, what themes from Today I Am Paul resonate with real world scenarios? Now, I've decided to plug this into Consensus, and I asked it the question, can artificial intelligence help fix the caregiving crisis? And that's one of the coolest things about consensus. You can actually ask it a question. You don't have to just type in search terms. So it came up with some sources to help me answer this question about the caregiving crisis. And I liked this source, okay? I found this one. It said, will artificial intelligence solve the human resource crisis in healthcare? Basically, what this source is about is there's not enough caregivers in the healthcare industry right now to care for all the folks who are aging. So will artificial intelligence help solve this crisis, right? Note that this was not the first result. Research is a process. It is normal to have to sift through the results, to open up different articles, to read through the abstract, to see if it fits what you want to talk about. It should take time, okay? It's not the first article that came up. You want to find one that fits your particular perspective really well, okay? So I've pulled a paragraph from here that I think I want to include in my final paper, okay? Note that right off the bat, I put my in-text citation here so that I have it ready. Because there were 3 or more authors in this text, okay, we see 1, 2, 3. MLA says I can just do the first author's last name and then put et al. So I have that ready here, okay? There weren't any page numbers because this is an online source. So my in-text citation is just the author's last name et al. Here. Okay. It reads, every second post-millennial believes that they will work together with robots and artificial intelligence within 10 years. The healthcare workforce crisis is due to at least 3 major issues. 1, doctor shortages worldwide, the aging and burnout of physicians, and a higher demand for chronic care. An effective system depends on the availability, accessibility, acceptability, and quality of its health workers. It is estimated that the needs-based shortage of healthcare workers globally is about 17.4 million. That's how many people they're short. And the aging workforce is an additional challenge. With the increase of life expectancy, the population over 65 years is expected to double by 2030, and the number of chronic illnesses, the demand towards the healthcare system is also constantly growing. Okay, so I've looked at this paragraph. I've decided the quote that I want to include in my paper is, an effective system depends on the availability, accessibility, acceptability, and quality of its health workers. Now, I noticed something here, though. There's a link to something else. And I'm wondering, what is that, right? So I click on the 2, and it takes me down to this source in my original sources references page, or their works cited page, right? Global Health Workforce Alliance. So this is where that info came from. So this info here came from this other source. So I need to look that up to see if it's useful for my paper and if it helps back up the points that I want to make, right? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I found it online here, okay, a universal truth, no health without a workforce. And I found this quote, which is pretty much exactly what the other source said, okay? So this is where they got that info. It says, it is not all about numbers. The goal of universal health coverage requires a paradigm shift, going beyond a discourse on shortages, but rather focusing more explicitly on the accessibility, acceptability, quality, and productivity of the health workforce, placing equity at the center of the agenda. Sound familiar? It sounds like this is where they got that information. So now I have this source to cite. I have the World Health Organization. That's the author of this piece. It's a group author. So I've put that right here, ready for my in-text citation, okay? And I'm going to highlight the part that I actually want to include in my paper. All right, so now we get to part 2. We have found our source. We found our quote that we want to include. Now it's all about integrating it as we go to write the paper, okay? So remember, here is my quote. Now, Mesco et al. And the World Health Organization basically say the same thing here. So I can cite both in my in-text citation. And what that does is it says, you know, it's not just me who thinks this, and it's not just Mesco et al. Who thinks this, it's actually also the World Health Organization who thinks this. So that's pretty darn convincing, right? Now I have a couple of sources to back up my point. All right, so it makes me look more credible. Okay. Then I know that I also have to find a quote from a peer. So I found this quote from the discussion board on Today I Am Paul. Ava wrote, my question from this reading is, how is the family okay with the android constantly impersonating them and people that aren't even alive anymore? A fair question that I would like to tie into my own thoughts here, okay? So the third thing that I have to tie into my paper is ChatGPT's paper. Remember, this is a critique paper, and the story itself, Today I Am Paul. So you're juggling a lot of sources here as you go to write this paper after finding your sources, okay? What you're doing is you're writing a critique, but you're also stating your own opinion in this paper and what you think, all right? And if ChatGPT covered that or not. So I'm going to go ahead and take you through how I might write one of those paragraphs. Here's a potential topic sentence, meaning my like mini thesis for that paragraph or what I'm going to talk about. It says, one of the things that stood out to me the most when reading Today I Am Paul were the implications for caregiving, particularly in light of the current shortage of healthcare workers. So I've tied the story here to a real life problem, right? And I have my citations there to back me up to say there is a shortage of healthcare workers. It's not my opinion. So here's my full paragraph. I start off with that topic sentence. I've cited my sources together. The next thing I've done is decided to include my sources by paraphrasing, supporting details, and including a quote. So I have, according to Mesko et al., an effective healthcare system depends on the availability, accessibility, acceptability, and quality of its health workers. But unfortunately, there is an increasing shortage of these workers worldwide. Mesko et al. Suggests that artificial intelligence may be a long-term solution to this problem. So here's the difference between my sources. When I read from the World Health Organization, they didn't really talk about artificial intelligence directly, whereas Mesko et al. Was talking about that. So here I've, said, look, they're both talking about the shortage, but Mesko et al. Suggests that artificial intelligence could be a long-term solution. Then I have my connection to the story. Using sentient android caregivers, however, comes with its own problems, as explored in Today I Am Paul. Okay, so in this short story, we can see this kind of play out, this real world scenario play out, and it does have a couple of problems. Here's one from my peer, right? Sentient androids pose philosophical questions like the one Ava asks when she states, how was the family okay with the android constantly impersonating them and people that aren't even alive anymore? So even though this might fill a shortage of healthcare workers, it comes with some issues, right? So the next thing that I need to do is tie in my thoughts, okay? So I have this question here, so what, right? So we've identified a problem. We see that this can play out in Today I Am Paul. We see there's an issue with it. Why does it matter? Why should I care? What is my take on this as the author? Okay, so I'm going to tie it all together. So here's my paragraph. The beginning part of this is all the same as what we just read. And then I've added at the bottom here, it is these kinds of philosophical questions which display the potential for extreme harm regarding sentient artificial intelligence. This is a point left almost entirely unacknowledged by ChatGPT in all versions of the paper I prompted it for. Okay, so here is the heart of it. I'm critiquing ChatGPT. I'm saying it didn't cover this. Okay, I'm saying it should have covered this. And this is a big deal. This is, displaying potential extreme harm, all right, regarding sentient artificial intelligence. So hopefully that gives you an idea of like how to write this paper a little bit and how to integrate your sources. Please do come back to this as you go to write your paper. It'll take you through that. There's also suggested organization, all right, with the prompts so that you can review that online and see, how do I write this out? I know it's a different type of paper. Couple of tips here for you. Make sure that you transition between paragraphs by connecting your ideas. So not just saying like, moreover, or additionally, but like telling me how these things connect. Why did you put it in that order? There's not a wrong order, but you got to kind of explain what you're doing, okay? Make sure you answer that question, so what or why does it matter? And make sure that you cite, okay? And I'm going to take you through how to cite here in just a second. So here's how to cite a secondary source in MLA. If you have a journal article, okay, here's the journal article formatting. I don't mind if you use a citation machine, but you got to come back and check it, okay? So they're not 100% accurate. I don't know why. I wish they were, but you got to come back and check that you have the author's last name, comma, first name, second author if there is one, title of the piece in quotes, title of the journal in italics, volume, issue number, year it was published, the pages, and the DOI, which is the digital object identifier there. Here's how to cite a website, okay? Websites often have group authors. So here's the group author. By the way, this first part of the citation in your works cited is always what goes in text, all right? So you would never want to copy and paste this whole thing and put it in your paper. That's way too much. What you want to do is just take this first author's last name or group author and pop that in for your in-text citation, okay? Then you have the title of the web page itself, like this particular page, the title of the whole website, and then you have the link and the date that you last accessed it. Here's how to cite ChatGPT and MLA. This is something that should be new to you. It's new to most people, okay? But if you use ChatGPT, you do need to cite it, okay? What you're gonna do to cite it is put the prompt in quotes. The prompt is whatever you fed it. So if you said, write me a 5-page paper, you would have that in the quotes and then prompt. You'd have ChatGPT, the version number, the OpenAI, which is the company, the year that you chatted with it, and then the link. So here's an example, okay? In 200 words, describe the symbolism of the green light in the book, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's what that person typed in as their prompt. They had ChatGPT version 3.5, OpenAI, the date of access, and the link to it. The link is not going to last because it disappears. So the link is really just to ChatGPT in general. Then you might be wondering, what does your in-text citation look like? So if you are folding in a quote from ChatGPT, which you should be in your critique paper, you're going to write something like, however, when further prompted to cite the source on which that summary was based, it noted that it lacked the ability to conduct research or cite sources independently, but that it could provide a list of scholarly sources related to the symbolism of the green light in The Great Gatsby. So I'm critiquing ChatGPT here and I'm quoting what it said. And then I take the first 3 words of the prompt from my works cited page and put it in quotes at the end of that sentence that has the quote from ChatGPT. All right, so it's the first part of your works cited that goes as your in-text citation here. It's kind of the same thing as like the author's last name, right? If we look back here, here's the author, the group author, that's what would go in text. Here's the authors, that's what would go in text. But with ChatGPT, the beginning of your citation here in your works cited is that first 3 words. So that's how you're going to cite it in text. Okay. All right. That's about everything that you need to know as far as finding and integrating sources for your final research paper. I wish you the best of luck and I look forward to seeing your work. Have a great day.